So today is lesson 28, and this is all about measuring time and elapsed time. What does elapsed time mean?
Forward time?
Kind of.
It means like slow.
It's like how much time has gone on, right? So how much time happened between point A to point B? Exactly. Very good. So that's what we're talking about today. Okay, we measure time by the movement of the earth. Okay, so this is where like math and science kind of play together. Okay, we have seconds which turn into minutes. Minutes turn into hours, hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months, months to years, decades, centuries, millenniums. Okay, a thousand. So century is 100, millennium is 1,000. So in the year 2000, it was a new millennium that we were starting, which is a pretty big deal. Okay, did you know, interesting fact, it takes the earth about, not exactly, about 365 days. To be exact, it's 365 and a fourth of a day to travel once around the sun. Okay? Most years have 365 days in it, if you look at a calendar.
Unless it's a leap year.
We call these common years, but every 4 years we have a leap year. Why do you think every 4 years? Yes.
Because the Earth goes around 365 days in a fourth of a day.
And if you have 4 fourths, 4 years, 1/4 makes a whole. Very good. We've been talking about fractions and equaling a whole. So that fourth every 4 years makes up an extra day, which is why every 4 years we have 366 days in that year. So if you look down there at the bottom, it says 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is equal to that 1 full day. Okay, so a century. A century is how many years?
100.
It's 100 years. Okay. So if I'm talking about 100 years and I want to know how many decades are in a century, what do we know about a decade?
A decade is 10 years.
Okay, so if a decade is 10 years, then how many decades are in a century?
10. 10 decades.
How do you know?
Because 10 times 10 would equal 100.
Very good. So there are 10 decades in 1 year. Perfect. Because 10 times 10 equals the 100. According to this calendar, looking at the board, the June 2014 calendar, what day is June 8th on? What day of a week?
Sunday.
Okay. You need to be able to identify days on a calendar, because when we talk about from this day to another day, that is describing elapsed time. Okay? All right. 2 different types of clocks. The first one is a digital. That's what most of us are used to these days. The second is called an analog clock.
I have one in my room.
I have 2 analog clocks in here. I believe in analog clocks. I think they're important.
1, 2.
Not everything is digital. Okay? There are still watches that are analog style. Okay, so we have one up at the front of the room, one at the back of the room. The one at the back of the room has those fan blades of a windmill that shows you the minute that it's representing, so that it helps you kind of figure out what time it is, because we are not used to always reading analog clocks. A lot of us are used to reading digital ones. I feel it is very important for you to still be able to read an analog clock. So that's why those are up there, to help you figure out the minutes around the clock face. Okay, sometimes we refer to the time of day using fractions of an hour. So if you've ever heard somebody say, oh, it's a quarter till 12, it means that it's 11:45. Okay, we break up our analog clock into quarters. So I did this one day in class. Remember the clock in the front of the room? I broke it up into fourths, into quarters. So you can say, oh, it's a 1:15, or it's a 3:15 if my minute hand is to the 3. Okay? If I drew, let's see, I drew this time, I would say it's 1/2 past 5, because it's half the way past 5. Okay, a quarter hour is 15 minutes. So there's a lot of examples there that show you a quarter of an hour. Half an hour is 30 minutes. The 24 hours of a day are divided into AM and PM. So 12 a.m. is actually midnight, which is the beginning of each day. 12 p.m. is afternoon, around lunchtime when we're finishing up lunch. The midpoint of each day is at the 12 o'clock hour. The 12 hours before noon are AM. The 12 hours after noon are all PM. Okay? The clock shows the time that Rick's first morning class ends. This is the time that it ends. He woke up 2 hours before this time. His lunch period begins 3 hours after this time. First, we want to know, what time did Rick wake up? If it says he woke up 2 hours before the time given in my clock, where would that put my hour hand? My hour hand is this one right here, pointing at the 9.
7:15.
Hold on, I have one person answering the question. I have one person, and I've already picked him. Y'all listen.
It would be 7:05 because you move the hour hand back 2 numbers because each number is 2 hours.
Very
with the hour
good.
hand.
He's saying each of these numbers is representing 1 hour. So if I went back 1 hour, I'd be at the 8. If I went back another, I'd be at the 7. And we're looking at the hour hand. So my correct time is 7:05. AM or PM?
AM.
How do we know?
Because it's morning time.
Morning class. So 7:05 AM. Okay, what time does Rick's lunch period begin? What do we know about Rick's lunch period? It begins 3 hours after this time. So if I was at 9 and I went 3 hours later, that's 1, 2, 3. So my hour is going to be 12:05
So it's 12:05.
AM or PM?
Because it didn't say any more minutes.
PM. Why is it PM and not AM?
After 12.
But it
In the
can also,
afternoon.
yes, it's after 12 in the afternoon. Very good. Elapsed time is the amount of time between a starting time and an ending time. So it's the time that goes by. For example, if you start homework at 4 o'clock, you finish at 5:15, then 1 hour and 15 minutes is the elapsed time between the time you started and the time you finished. Okay, does everybody understand elapsed time? It's the time it takes you from the start to finish of something. How much time went by? So if I look at the problem that says Raven and her friends attended a movie that was 2 hours and 5 minutes long,
Whoa.
and it ended at 9:20 p.m. What time did the movie begin? How could I figure that out? I want you to work this out on your whiteboard, how you think you could figure this out, and we'll talk about it in just a second. Okay, a lot of you had 7:15. Some of you forgot to put AM or PM.
Whoop.
Would it be AM or PM?
PM.
PM. Okay, I saw this on one person's board and I really liked this. It was 9:20 minus 2 hours and 5 minutes.
I was going to do that, but I didn't end up doing it.
So when you solve this, oops, I don't need to do that one. Undo. I went too far over. You end up with 7:15 and it is PM. Did anybody solve it differently? I want to hear from you if you did.
I made a clock.
Who made a clock?
Me.
That's what I did.
Pretty.
Copycat.
I like visuals.
I made it look better.
I did it in my head. I did it.
Okay, so if we have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and if it ended at 9:05, then I can look and see, oh, sorry, it ended at 9:20. Sorry. Okay, so some people used a visual. They said, okay, it ends at 9:20. 2 hours before that would be at the 7. And then 5 minutes prior would go back to the 3. So my new time would be 7:15. Some people like to see it visually. I like visuals. Some people like to do mental math. Some people like to just work it out like how I did right here, which also works. Now, your assignment today is going to be on pages 180, which is number 190. 190 has number 1 on it, and it goes through 192. Numbers 1 through 3 need an equation before you solve it. You have the rest of class to work.